Hey, welcome to the Do Good Work podcast. Today I am talking to Lori Kraska. Lori is the founder and CEO of Growth Owl, and she is an accomplished revenue generation management expert with over 22 years of experience in corporate sponsorship support, fundraising, and marketing strategy roles. She's also the founder and CEO of Growth Owl, a purpose driven organization that empowers nonprofits, startups, and associations with the tools they need to achieve their funding goals. As an MBA graduate with a fundraising executive certification, Lori has established a reputation for exceeding revenue and fundraising goals, building high performance teams, and developing relationships quickly. And she is on a mission to empower purposeful organizations with the best practices and tools to generate funding, sponsorship, and support. Lori, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's always fun talking to people who get media, who get revenue, who get marketing, and who get sales. But one of the parameters, one of the interesting pieces is that businesses, companies, nonprofits, we all need revenue, we all need growth, but how we go about that, the activities, the focal points, the channels are different and unique. I kind of want to get your high level perspective of what makes your framework at Growth Owl unique. How do you look at growth and how do you tie that based on achieving growth, but in your unique style and your unique approach?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So at Growth Owl, we focus solely on what I call purpose-driven organizations.
Yeah.
So nonprofits, associations, other purpose-driven organizations, startups with a soul, as I like to say as well.
Nice.
And specifically, the lane that we play in is in corporate sponsorship or corporate support, corporate philanthropy. And specifically that lane because before I started Growth Owl about 5 years ago, I actually worked with PBS and NPR in corporate sponsorship support, working with a group of people that would go out and find corporate funding on behalf of stations. And I thought to myself, this is a great model to actually help other types of purpose-driven organizations find funding. So that's kind of how Growth Out was born. But back to your original question, we really kind of stick to the knitting of engaging with corporations. Like I said, try to stay within that Fortune 1000 or larger corporations, really helping nonprofits and purpose-driven organizations find their voice on how do you actually approach corporations? What is the process going to be like? What training do I need? And understanding that there's a whole world of a corporation that a lot of folks don't understand. So we help them understand that a bit. And in terms of how do we measure success, it really varies per client, but we measure success as to how many successful introductions, pairings, matchmaking per se can we make between a purpose-driven organization and a large corporation. Were they able to secure sponsorship dollars or support? Sometimes it's resource support. I had a nonprofit reach out to me saying they badly needed to furnish their new offices. They didn't have a budget for it. Was there some sort of sponsorship that could be in kind to allow furniture? Sure, absolutely. So you never know what it is. So success is usually either defined by the dollars that came in for sponsorship or philanthropic revenue, or the number of relationships that we were able to make.
No, I like that. It's a different approach to it. When you say the Fortune 1000, this raises the feel or the look of the not limit, but like it's a smaller quote unquote market size. It's 1,000 people. Like, how do you approach that? Because if there's how many nonprofits are there versus how many Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 like companies are there, like the top in the US? How do you balance the needs and how do you balance the positioning and making sure that every introduction is new and like how does that look like? Because the total addressable market there seems like it's smaller.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. A lot of nonprofits, they could be multi-million dollar, nationally known nonprofits or a small nonprofit of 3 people. A lot of them are afraid to approach larger companies. They think that they're not going to be relevant to them. The opposite is actually true. Corporations now more than ever are looking for niche opportunities to be involved because of things like corporate social responsibility, inclusion efforts, accessibility efforts, sustainability efforts, name it. There's budgets and goals that they have attached to these things. So they have chief sustainability officers, chief accessibility officers that have been tasked to find purpose-driven organizations to work with, and in many cases, paid sponsorship opportunities to get involved. So what I find is that most nonprofits, they go to kind of the same well per se all the time, the
Hmm.
same types of funders, the same types of foundations. And it's great to go back to people that you can rely on. We're living in a business world that is changing by the second, and we have to find new ways to engage and to kind of break out of our comfort zones when we're trying to find funding or sponsorship support. So really a great way to diversify yourself is just to try to actually reach out to these large organizations, because you'd be surprised, although there is competition, it's not as much as you think from philanthropies and nonprofits, other purpose-driven organizations that are reaching out. So, and the other thing too is usually you can find on their website the things that they support.
Yeah.
There are corporations that support K through 12 education or initiatives for clean water. So if you can go in with a really succinct message to show how you can fill the areas that they are looking to support, how your organization fulfills that, there's a great chance that you'll have a successful, at least a successful conversation.
So it's almost like one of those things where people don't take the action because they disqualify themselves before they ever try. What it
Absolutely.
sounds
It happens all the time. And you would be surprised at how large of an organization will think that way. Nationally known, you would be
really.
surprised. Yes.
Oh, what would be so the key actions are the research, the marketing, positioning, the messaging. What would you say some of the I don't know the nuances that you see startups with the soul miss when they're having
Yeah.
these conversations?
The biggest thing that I see that I try to talk to as many organizations about is brevity is your friend. Most organizations say way too much in that first encounter or first email. So
Okay.
most of the time it's an email, right? You have to remember that the average corporate decision maker who's in charge of money literally gets at least 120 emails a day. That's what
Yeah.
research tells us. All right. If you are sending a 300, 400, 500 word email trying to explain who exactly you are, why you're deserving of money, here's what we want, it's not going to get read.
Yeah.
Never. It's not going to get read. So the key is embrace brevity. And I have a bit of a formula that I actually suggest to my purpose driven organizations. That first outreach email, you keep it to 150 words or less. I know that's going to seem really hard, but
Mhm.
I'm telling you, this is really going to help you stand out. 150 words or less. Who are you? What is your organization? Give me a few words about what your organization does. How does your organization match up? Like I was talking earlier, what have you researched to find that you've matched up with what their core values or corporate social responsibility goals are? So if you are an organization that's into local cleanup, wanting to clean up your water, clean up your parks, that a Fortune 500 that's headquartered in your area recently supported something like that. You saw that in a news press release or on television, you reference that. So that's kind of the meat of it, to get their attention. You've done a little work to see at least, okay, you've given the decision maker the connection, right? Here's the reason why we should talk. And then the last part of that email, what do you want next? Do you want
Hmm.
a meeting? Do you want a phone call? Do you want an opportunity to send information? Never send unsolicited information attachments. Let me tell you why. Especially with larger organizations, the email servers have gotten so complex that if you're a new email address that it does not recognize, many times it will blacklist you for sending an attachment that has not been approved.
Yeah.
So never send attachments on the first try. So 150 words or less. Who are you? How do you connect to that corporation philanthropically or through mission, vision, and values, and what you want next? That brevity is your friend.
The call to engagement, call to conversation, call to next steps, and then from there open the doors if it's a good fit. How do you? This isn't very tactical, but it's also with on the sales front. Uh,
Yeah.
Follow up. Like I can imagine right now. Hey, Lori, we listened to you. We sent 20 emails. We got no responses. Okay, that's great. You did the action, but what's the actual next steps look like? The follow up, the communications. It's not just one and done.
Correct. Yeah. So, I've been doing this for over 23 years now. So
Yeah.
for me, not getting a follow up email in 2 weeks is nothing. But to some of the first clients I'm working with that are new to this, it's, oh, they haven't responded yet. Well, they've got a lot going on. So I do recommend that you follow up, create a timeline that works for you. But I also want to say the best time to start speaking to companies is when you don't need their support.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
create a situation where you just want them to get to know you in them, or you to get to know them as well. And when the correct time is ready, you've already laid in the foundational work that you can
Hmm.
easily make a phone call that they're ready to talk to you. And let me tell you something, to get a email from a nonprofit or other purpose-driven organization saying, we just really want to get to know you, your pillars, how we might fit together, as opposed to, I've got something that we need support for. It's music to their ears. They
Yeah.
rarely hear it or see it. So that's something that I recommend, if you rewind a bit, to just start reaching out before you even need support.
Yeah, don't show that you need it, right? Don't show that like it's
Yeah. I mean, they
not
know
that
you
you
do.
you need it, of course. That's
Yeah.
the key, but it's also
Right.
you don't have to come off as desperate and at least build a real relationship and a rapport. I think that's an interesting piece.
Yeah, a lot of people equate what I do to matchmaking. So if we were in a matchmaking situation
Yeah.
and this is like a first date, do not ask me to marry you. That's not good.
Oh man, that's
Let's
hilarious.
get to know each other, right? So because these corporate dollars, they are competitive, but they're very niche, and corporations want to make sure that they are going to not only something that resonates with them, but something that's going to really engage community interest as well. So they'll vet you. There's also research that over 50% of corporations will vet nonprofits and other purpose-driven organizations before they return a phone call or return an email.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. So if you're not getting a response right away, they might be making sure that you're legit.
Where does branding play a role in that? I know that a lot of marketing agencies or nonprofit support, like they all talk about like the top of funnel awareness pieces. And I mean,
Yeah.
for you and me being like revenue leaders or like knowing that I care about results and outcomes, like sometimes I don't count the vanity metrics, but I think there's a key role with how do you look like in the marketplace? Where do you see
Mm-hmm.
the importance of brand?
With a lot of purpose-driven organizations, it's first internally getting your house in order.
Huh.
What do you internally think your brand is? Because a lot of times that's not even on the same page. I was actually just working on some short form content on those situations where one side of the organization doesn't know what the other side is doing.
Yeah.
And then they both go to the same potential corporate sponsor and neither of them know that they went there. This happens more than you would know. It's pretty amazing. The reason I reference that in regards to your question is that if you get 10 people in a room at your organization and ask, what is our brand? What is our narrative? There's probably going to be a lot of different differentiation. So really, before I really start talking about brand and the importance of the brand in front of the potential sponsor, are
Mhm.
we all on board in what we're doing internally? That's probably the thing that I see a lot with purpose driven organizations. So, and then you also see the struggles with purpose driven organizations that maybe you've got people that have been there a very long time. They're
Yeah.
struggling with even saying the word revenue
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's a very mission driven environment. But to operate, you need revenue, right? To keep growing programs to help your end user, you need money. So,
Yeah.
how do you balance those things are probably the things that I see the most in terms of that internal brand I was referencing earlier.
No, that makes a lot of sense. We had someone on the pod earlier. I think it might have been 2 or 3 years ago. When I say earlier, these years
Yeah,
just
yeah,
blur
sure.
at this point. But I think that
Yeah,
was one of the key things is that running the nonprofit like a business, but actually seeing it as a business and not seeing it as like a bad thing to ask for money to support or
yeah.
invest in the resources.
It's a
Let's
big part of the work that I do.
I think that's key, the mindset shift. Well, let's shift gears here and talk
Yeah.
about you running the business. So 5 years in, like how is the experience running the business on your own terms and working with clients that you love? What are some of the highlights? And then we'll also do the flip. Like what are some of the struggles that you're facing?
Yeah, I have had an entrepreneurial bug for years. I will out myself that I'm in my late 40s. I'll just say that.
Okay, that's fine.
But I had thought about starting a business back when I was in my 20s. It was always there.
Yeah.
But to be quite frank, the what you perceive as climbing that corporate ladder, and they call those golden handcuffs per se, it all looked just a part of kind of this is what you do, right?
Mhm.
And it fulfills the ego, and it fulfills it allowed me to do a lot of great things to where I am today. But that wanting to start my own thing never subsided. It
Yeah.
grew. So finally, like I said, being in this role with public media, I just really thought it would be great to take these concepts and how we engage and open that up to a whole new audience. Not that nonprofits don't already engage with corporations, but really honing in, creating a focus around it and providing training and support around it, I thought was something that was unique, fairly unique. And I absolutely love having my own business.
Yeah.
I just feel like my DNA is perfect for it. I don't know. Some people will say, well, do you wish you would have pulled the trigger when you were in your 20s? I look back at that now and I say no, because every experience that I've had has gotten to me where I am now. And the learnings I have, I wouldn't have had when I was in my 20s. So for me specifically, this works pretty well. I love the independence. I love choosing clients on my terms.
Yeah.
There was a point that I did spend some time on the agency side. I'll be very honest, I didn't like it at all because I saw how much certain clients, because of the amount of work that clients brought these agencies, you're beholden to them.
Yeah.
And to a point where it could be a bit unhealthy. So what I did learn from those experiences, though, is when you're coming into your business, you have to have a really good mix of types of clients and always prospecting for new kinds of clients. You can't get comfortable.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is being an entrepreneur was really built for me. I love it. The challenges are for me right now is I'm still in growth mode, growing some new aspects of my business. And now I'm in a point where I'm bringing on some other people, not full time, but bringing on some part-time people. And there's that element of trust,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh,
It's that element of, okay, I could just do this myself, but I know I have to let this go, right? There are
yes.
just certain things. That's probably the biggest challenge for a type A like me. And I'm sure other type A's out there that are listening, when you know that I could just do this myself in 10 minutes, but that's not the point. The point is you need to be doing much more strategic things. So I've gotten to a place in my business where I'm doing that, but it's still a challenge mentally to remind myself this is why you're doing that. It's just a part of the growth process. So, and you just have to embrace the unknown.
Oh
When
yeah.
I started, I was only 2 years in and then COVID hit. I was very fortunate that I was able to grow my business during COVID-19. I was very fortunate with that. But I was able to do it because I was able to adapt to what my clients needed at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, besides offering what I normally offer in terms of corporate sponsorship, I got to go back to some of my tried and true management principles and things that I was doing in the for-profit sector that helped these other organizations that just needed help. So, it was me being a really good chameleon to adapt to what was needed to stay in growth mode during that time. So, you just have to get ready to pivot. I know everybody says that word, but I can't think of a better word than there are going to be times where you have to pivot. And probably the best business advice I ever got when I was starting my business, it was consistent. I was told by really successful people, if you're open to your business successfully changing and evolving over time, you will be successful. If you're staying in kind of one model and this is what works for me, I don't need to change it, that's where it's going to be hard, especially in an economy like ours today.
Oh, that is fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot to unpack right there. But on that point on embracing the chameleon, I think that is one of the true sparks of the entrepreneur is to be
Yeah.
able to be variable and open to variability being a normal. And I think I was thinking about the other day when people say, isn't it risky? Well, it's riskier working for one person, in my opinion,
Oh,
versus having,
yeah.
right? So that there's different approaches to that. One of the things that I thought was interesting, one of my friends did like a study and research around like founders over the
Yeah.
years, et cetera. And this is not an age thing. And anyone listening to here, like this is not an age statement, but I
Yeah.
thought it was an interesting perspective. Everyone, I've seen successful 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and
Mhm.
the whole gamut.
Yeah.
But he mentioned that the average age that someone had their stride to really lifelong, that leaving legacy or something there, was around 43. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's different from what we're hearing online, where it's like some 20-some-year-old so doing some tech startup, when in reality
Sure.
everyone's in their own pace, everyone's in their own time, but also it's that experience that I think that you bring to the table, or that we are able to accumulate over time. And I think I thought that was pretty interesting. One other note too, like I've been in the agency world, and I think in general, agency, like 6 months equals like 3 years. Like you just age faster. You feel
Yes.
you feel,
Yes.
but there is that level of unhealthy
Yeah.
attachment, or like the demands of the clients. One of the things that I try to balance, I don't think work-life balance is a thing, but I think holistic life integration is a balance that we're all trying to navigate. If that's
Yeah.
for W-2 or for now entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
your full-time job, how have you balanced those issues? And like sometimes, like when clients just go directly to you and they're asking, you're like the go-to, you're the face of your company, you're the face of the brand, you're the go-to, you're the thought leader, you're the one that's going to support them. How do you create a safe separation from that? Because that's also something that I've been
Mm.
working through as well, being that face, being that person, to have safe boundaries, but also making sure that your health is intact.
Yeah. So I think words have power in how you position things.
Hmm.
So there's a very different response if a client comes to me looking for a very specific solution, and I know in my head that I can give it, but I know that to create some boundaries and to foster learning for them, they need to figure this out. I might just give them a few prompts for them
Okay.
to think about. Okay, have you thought about it this way? And if you think about it this way, where are you now? And it takes them, again, it might take them a little longer to get to where I could get them if I just tell them. But the whole idea is I want to teach people how to fish,
Yeah.
right? So I'll give them prompts to do that. And I think that has really helped create some boundaries where now, where maybe somebody would contact me a couple times a week with something, I don't hear from them because they know how my prompt process works, right? So that would be my suggestion in terms of when you're being contacted, because it is very easy just to give a solution, but you're not providing the learning that the client needs in the long run.
Yeah, that's necessary. One of the things that I've done with teams is like the three solutions coaching. If someone
Oh,
has a
okay.
question, come to me with three answers, and then
Hmm.
I'll work with you to select the one and tell you why.
I
Over
like that.
time, like the team comes to you and is like, okay, I know what you're gonna say, but
Yeah.
here are the things, and I'm gonna choose this one because I think that's what you're gonna, and you're just all you're
Yeah.
doing is valid. Yep. And that's the goal. That's
Yeah.
pretty fascinating. And then building the team, growing. On the chameleon approach, though, I find this fascinating because I think
Yeah.
it's a true statement. We can't stay stagnant. What are some of the evolutions you're currently making besides hiring the team, building the team out, and some of the exciting things that are on the horizon that you're working towards?
Yeah. So I think some of my evolutions that I'm going around now is a lot of my work in the past has been direct one-on-one on Zoom or go traveling to see clients, facilitating in a room, conference speaking. Now I'm building out a whole part of my business that would be more on demand, where you could access training of what I do. And that's something that if you would have asked me 5 years ago when I started this, it wouldn't have even been something I thought of.
Yeah.
But now I know it's actually necessary. So, and once I've started working on that, other things have come up like, oh, well, I could do this, we could do this. And that's what's exciting when something new comes up. It's kind of a something that's just ready to hit to the street. It's the idea that whose time has come. That's what they
Yeah.
call it, right? It just feels right. And you just have to run with it. You can't be afraid to experiment and try new things. You have to go into it that not everyone's going to like this, but the right people are going to love it.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude to have. And I think I want to go back to something you said earlier about age in terms of entrepreneurs. I
Yeah.
will say that as you get older, your concern about other people's thoughts about what you're doing really subsides
I
big
love it.
time. So if you're worried about, oh, what my parents are going to think, what are my friends going to think, what I've accumulated all of this and I'm walking away from it, when you're in the stage of my life, I'm in the stage of my life I'm in, and other entrepreneurs are in this stage of their life, it's, well, who friggin' cares what they think? This is my life, right?
Yeah.
I just find that is something that I've acquired. That didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
that is a lot of learning, a lot of lessons, a lot of interactions, getting to know myself. And that comfort level, I think, is very helpful for those that are starting businesses that are in that, you were saying, what, age 43?
That was an average. That was just one study, but I
Yeah.
thought it was
Yeah. I
fascinating.
think there's something about that.
These are things that
Yeah.
stayed for like over 50 years, like companies that over
Yeah.
50 or organizations or groups. But that is really true. And then going back to like you're building almost, I don't know if it's a cohort model, a group model, a asynchronous plus live
Mm.
training model. Like there, that model, it is built for some and it is not built for others, right? So that's
Yeah.
something like I'm personally doing right now as well as like
Yeah.
transitioning. We're doing our flight, our maiden flight later this month, like the first group,
Yes. Love it.
all async. And it's different. It's radically different, but it
Yeah.
has to happen. We're gonna have to
Yeah.
test it, and then the first ones go substantially well, and then the next one's gonna be even better, and then even better, and
Right.
even better. But that's the key thing is, whenever I see, and I say this to the day, like when I started in the game, like I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Oh, I started tinkering in startups and failing stuff, and since
Yeah.
2011, I think 12. Anyways, all that failure. But then when I really got serious in some groups and investments, et cetera,
Yeah.
for education and learning, like 2015, the people who remain consistent, even if they've sucked in the beginning
Yeah.
till now, like what, how many years is that? It's 8 years.
Yeah.
Like where they're profoundly better and either at a better spot on their business because we remain consistent. So yeah, the
Yeah.
variability of entrepreneurship is great, but just pick it and then from there keep going down the line and evolve in that same line. I think
Yeah.
that's what I've seen work and constantly work. It's just the consistency over time.
Yeah. You can't beat consistency.
Oh, I love that. Well, Lori, this is an awesome conversation for our audience out there. What's the best place for people to, one, thank you for being on, and two, learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, check out my website, thegrowthowl.com. I'm on LinkedIn just about all the time. You can find me, Lori Zoss Kraska, on LinkedIn.
Oh, wonderful. Put those links in the show notes. Lori, thanks for being on.
Thanks. Enjoyed it.
If you found value in today's podcast, please consider sharing this with someone that you believe could also benefit from this episode. You never know, you may be the catalyst that opens them up to a new way of operating their business and experiencing life. As always, it's an honor to be a small part of your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.